You wake up shipwrecked. No crew, no ship, nothing but a broken start and a world that clearly doesn't care if you survive the next 10 minutes. That's the core idea behind Windrose, and honestly, it might be one of the most interesting survival games coming in 2026, or one that ends up overwhelming itself. This is Windrose, before you buy. So here's what makes this game stand out immediately. It's not just another chop trees, craft axe, repeat survival loop. Windrose throws you into a full pirate fantasy, and I mean full. You're not just surviving on an island, you're rebuilding your identity as a captain, putting together a crew, and eventually taking control of a ship that becomes your moving base of operations. And that transition, from stranded survivor to commanding a ship in open waters, is probably the biggest hook here. The game blends open-world survival, naval combat, and Souls-like style fighting, all in one system. Windrose lets you move seamlessly between land and sea, meaning you're not locked into one type of gameplay loop. One moment you're mining resources in a cave, the next you're firing cannons and boarding enemy ships. That variety is a huge positive, especially if you're someone who gets bored of traditional survival games. But let's talk about what actually makes it feel different. First, the progression system. Instead of just grinding XP, your strength mostly comes from what you build and craft. Better gear, better weapons, better ship upgrades. That's what pushes you forward. And I actually like that. It gives your progress a physical sense. You see your improvement, not just watch numbers go up. There's also no traditional hunger or thirst punishment system. Food isn't there to annoy you, it buffs you. That's a small design choice, but it changes the whole pacing of the game. Less micromanagement, more focus on exploration and combat. Now, speaking of combat, this is where things get interesting and a little risky. The game leans into Souls-like mechanics, dodging, parrying, stamina management, but in a survival game environment. That's a bold combination. On one hand, it makes fights feel meaningful. You can't just spam attacks, you actually have to think, position yourself, and commit. On the other hand, that kind of combat in a survival game can be frustrating if it's not perfectly balanced. And from early impressions, that's one of the potential concerns. Let's get into the positives first, because there are a lot. The world design looks genuinely impressive. Procedurally generated islands, but mixed with handcrafted dungeons and locations, so it doesn't feel completely random. You've got over 100 points of interest, caves, shipwrecks, things that actually reward exploration instead of wasting your time. Then there's the co-op aspect. You can play solo, but the game clearly shines when you're playing with friends, splitting roles, building together, managing a ship as a crew. That's where the fantasy really comes alive. And honestly, this might be one of the biggest reasons to buy the game, if you have people to play it with. Now let's balance that out, because there are definitely things to be cautious about. First, scope. This game is trying to do a lot. Survival systems, base building, naval combat, RPG progression, co-op, procedural worlds, story elements. That's a massive combination. And when a game tries to do everything, there's always a risk that some parts feel underdeveloped. Second, combat and difficulty balance. Souls-like combat sounds great on paper, but in a survival setting, it can become punishing, especially early on when you're under-geared. If enemies hit too hard or systems aren't well explained, it could push players away instead of pulling them in. Third, naval gameplay expectations. The ship combat is one of the biggest selling points, but also one of the biggest question marks. If it feels smooth, impactful, and strategic, this game could stand out massively. But if it ends up feeling shallow or repetitive, that's going to be noticeable very quickly, especially since it's such a core part of the experience. And finally, early access uncertainty. The game is planned around a 2026 release window, but like many ambitious survival games, it's likely going to evolve over time. That means what you're buying at launch might not be the final vision yet. For some people, that's exciting. For others, it's a reason to wait. So, who is this game actually for? If you enjoy games like survival crafting mixed with exploration, if you like the idea of building your own pirate story, and especially if you have friends to play with, this could be something really special. But if you're looking for a perfectly polished, fully balanced experience right away, this might be one to approach carefully. Because Windrose feels like one of those games that could either become a cult favorite or something people check out for a week and move on from. And honestly, which one it becomes will depend entirely on how well these systems come together. From here, I'm stepping back. No commentary, just raw gameplay. So you can decide for yourself whether this is something worth jumping into or something better left on the horizon.